Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Rama Rama Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Radha 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 Giridhari Radha. Jai Jagannath, Jai Jagannath, Jaya Baladev, Jai Subhadra. Jai Subhadra. Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Yeah. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Is this all right, or do you feel that there's good sharpness on this? I don't know. How do you feel it? It's echoing. Is it okay? Is it echoing? So we will begin with the reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. And we are reading from A Threat Against ISKCON. Those who are following the book, it's on page 862, and we are reading volume 1. These personalities are now considered as my direct representatives. While I'm living, they will act as my zonal secretaries, and after my dismiss, they will be known as executors. Srila Prabhupada further described the role of the sannyasis. I have already awarded sannyas or renounced order of life to some of my students, and they have also got very important duties to perform in this connection. The sannyasis will travel to our different centers for preaching purpose, as well as enlightening the members of the center for spiritual advancement. Prabhupada's legal document went on to set forth general directions for the GBC secretary. They should travel regularly to the temples in their respective zones to ensure that each devotee chanted 16 rounds and followed a regulative schedule, and that the temples were clean. His 12 GBC secretaries would relieve him of management, and they would rectify present and future difficulties within the society. That rectification, Prabhupada's document explained, would be possible only when the devotees in each temple engaged fully in regulative devotional service, rising early for Mangal Aarti at 4:30, attending Srimad Bhagavatam class, and reciting the Sanskrit verses and chanting in the streets and distributing Back to Godhead magazines and other Krishna conscious literatures. This emphasizes on strictly following Krishna consciousness principles would supersede all material formulas for management. The GBC would ensure that in their appointed zone, all the devotees were properly engaged. There would be no Maya. The next day, Srila Prabhupada drafted another significant statement, naming Bhagwan, Rupanuga, and Karandhara trustees of his Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. The Bhaktivedanta Book Trust account will be used to publish my books and literatures and to establish temples throughout the world. Specifically, 3 temples are to be established, one each in Mayapur, Vrindavan, and Jagannath Puri. Since returning to America in 1967, Prabhupada had often said he would stay permanently in America as the adopted son of his disciples. This is nice. Now he revealed new plans. He spoke of going to India to preach and establish large ISKCON temples. For the devotees who based their activities mostly in small rented houses, Prabhupada's constructing cathedral-like building in India was inconceivable. In India, Prabhupada said he would teach his disciples how to preach and how to establish temples. Prabhupada picked a team, including 2 newly initiated sannyasis, to accompany him to India. In the future, he said, more disciples would join him, for India would become an important field for Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada wrote Satyarupa and Uddhava in Bhakti. I'll stop there. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It's so beautiful in the early days how things were set up. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriyat Nastapayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Neshtaki Jai. So, we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 9, verses 12 to 14. These are in prose, that's what you said, that there is no meter for it. So because we are going to read 3, I was thinking probably we will, if somebody would like, I mean, after I've recited, if somebody wants to read, then they can follow that. And for the rest, I will just read it through. The text 12. Atha kadachit kaschit Visala Patir Bhadra Kalya Purusha Pasum Alabhatya Padya Kama. Would anyone like to probably recite or repeat, or if not, then we could jump on the next one. Okay, so I'll probably do word to word for this one, and the following one I'll just read it through. So please repeat after me. Atha, thereafter, kadachit, at some time, kaschit, some, Vrisala Pati, the leader of Sudras engaged, the leaders of Sudras engaged in plundering the property of others. Bhadrakali, unto the goddess known as Bhadrakali. Purusha Pasum, an animal in the shape of a man. Alabhata started to sacrifice. Apatya Kama, desiring a son. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. At this time, being desirous of obtaining a son, a leader of dacoits who came from a Sudra family wanted to worship the goddess Bhadrakali by offering her in sacrifice a dull man who is considered no better than an animal. But low-class men such as Sudras worship demigods like goddess Kali or Bhadrakali for the fulfillment of material desires. To this end, they sometimes kill a human being before the deity. They generally choose a person who is not very intelligent. In other words, an animal in the shape of a man. Text 13. Tasya deva muktatya vasho padavim tad anuchara paridhavanto nishita samye tamasvrittayam anadhigata pasavya akashmukena vidhina kedaran virakshanena mirga varaha dhibhaya samrakshanam angira pravara sutam apasyan. I'll just read the translation on this one. The leader of the dacoits captured a man animal for sacrifice, but he escaped, and the leader ordered his followers to find him. They ran in different directions, but could not find him. Wandering here and there in the middle of the night, covered by the dense darkness, they came to a paddy field, where they saw the exalted son of Angira family, Jat Bharat, who were sitting in an elevated place, guarding the field against the attacks of deer and wild pigs. Text 14. Athate enam anavadya lakshanam avamirshya bharat karma nishpatim manyamana badhava rasanya kandika graham Paniyur Muda Vikashita Vadana. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. The followers and the servants of the dark poet chief considered Jat Bharat to pose qualities quite suitable for a man animal, and they decided that he was a perfect choice for sacrifice. Their faces brightened with happiness. They bounded him with ropes and brought him to the temple of the goddess of Kali. Purport. In some parts of India, animalistic men are still sacrificed before the goddess Kali. However, such a sacrifice is only performed by Sudras and dacoits. Their business is to plunder the wealthy and to become successful. And to become successful, they offer an animalistic man before the goddess Kali. It should be noted that they never sacrifice an intelligent man because before the goddess. In the body of the Brahmana, Bharat Maharaj appeared deaf and dumb, yet he was the most intelligent man in the world. Nevertheless, being completely surrendered unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he remained in that condition and did not protest being brought before the deity for slaughter. As we have learned from previous verses, he was very strong and could have very easily avoided being bounded by the world. But he did not do anything. He simply depended on the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his protection. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur describes surrender unto the Supreme Lord in this way. Mara bhi rakhavi yo ichha tumar, nitya das prati tulya adhikar. My Lord, I am now surrendered unto you. I am your eternal servant, and if you like, you can kill me, or if you like, you can protect me. In this case, I am fully surrendered unto you. Jai. Om Ajnana Tirumandasya Jnanam Janashalakaya Chashulmutam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hey, so it's a very interesting read today, and I think the whole character of Jet Bharat is very fascinating. Personally speaking, it's one of my favorites um, because of the sequence of events it has gone through, and you can see the life of Jet Bharat, Bharat Maharaj actually sequencing. So we all know who Jet Bharat is. He's Bharat Maharaj. In the body of the Brahmana. In his previous birth, he was a Diya. And because, the reason for him becoming a Diya was his attachment. When he was Bharat Maharaj, he renounced everything. Yet, when he went and when he was practicing his devotional service, he happened to be attached to a Diya. And it just shows how attachment is. He left his whole family. We touched on it. I'm sure previous speakers have touched on it. 10 million years, he was the king. And then when he decided to obviously leave everything and go to forest for his tapasya, he happened to get in touch with he happened to see a deer and started taking care of the deer and became so attached that he left his devotional practice. And at the time of death, he remembered only the deer, whether the deer ate or what was the deer doing, and then he left his body and in his next birth, he became a deer. But because of the Lord's mercy, he remembered that he became a deer. Now he has to do something. So he ran from his mother deer to a ashram, Pulasta ashram, and from there he started associating with the devotees. And just being there and doing his deer business, he was there doing his thing. And when he left his body, he took birth as Jet Bharat in the family of Brahmanas. And that's where he obviously remembered all his previous life and decided that I would rather be a deaf and a madman and internally focus on my ritual and keep remembering Krishna. So very, very interesting. In the last verse, text 11, we see Jet Bharat, how he was mistreated by his stepbrothers, 9 stepbrothers, in terms of how he was given food, because Jad Bharat was only working for food. The rest of the things he wasn't very much not interested. Um, so we see that Jad Bharat didn't see anything as offending to him if somebody would give whatever he would say, and he wouldn't protest on it. So he accepted everything in indifference. That's what the prophet says. Now, in today's verse, we see the leader of the Dacoits, desirous of a son, wanted to worship Bhadrakali by offering a dull man who is considered no better than a man animal. And his servants, whoever they captured initially, gave, and now they happen to find Jad Bharat and they captured him. It is mentioned in the prophets, we see that being completely surrendered unto the Supreme Lord, he remained in that condition, bounded by ropes, and did not protest being brought to slaughter. He simply depended on Supreme Lord for protection. Can we imagine that for ourselves? To be bounded. I mean, we can't even conceive that we would protest, because obviously we're not considering ourselves the soul. We had very much attached to the body. But Jad Bharat was completely surrendered. And that's what we learn and see, is that he is a very exalted devotee of the Lord. And he's not struggling with his anartha like we are, but he is at a prema state. So he has already considered everything very precisely, that how his approach in life would be for this life. So, and when we see in the prophet, it did mention that, he was not a weak person, he was strong. It mentions actually that he was so strong, like a bull, like, the power of a bull. He was very strong. So we can see that it says, as described in the previous, as his body was as strong as a bull and his limbs were very muscular. So to protest was not a big thing for him. He could have done it, but he didn't do it because he was fully surrendered. Now, we also said that, Jad Bharat is very exalted, and we cannot imitate exalted. I mean, we cannot imitate any devotees, but when we read in Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear the story, we see all these exalted devotees and their pastime. And the idea is obviously how we learn from it, what we learn from it. So today we will be touching a little bit of what we learned from the character of Jad Bharat. Firstly, we see in the prophet by Srila Prabhupada how he mentions about low-class men such as the Shudras who worship demigods like goddess Kali for the fulfillment of the desire. So, and especially when we talk about sacrificing animal or man animal, I mean, I haven't come across man animal I tried to search about it, but there is something that a couple of 100 years back it was practiced, because Srila Prabhupada also mentions in his purport that it was practiced for low class people and people who are dull. They do that. But in this day and age, in the present society, we do see goat sacrifice, very ghastly method of worship. It apparently is a worship for them, people who practice goat sacrifice or any kind of sacrifice to goddess Kali. You think about it, very ghastly, it's like, and the purpose behind it is obviously for material fulfillment. It's for material desires. I happen to have someone I know back in Fiji who practiced this, and I asked him, why do you do that? And the answer that I got was like, oh, it's been happening in my family for generations, and that is why I still practice that, and we still practice that. So that's okay. And then you can't debate on it, like, because people have, people, I guess it comes with intelligence. It comes with getting the right knowledge, get, from the right source. Also, when the time is right for the person to get that knowledge. And when Krishna is no merciful on them, I guess from the whole process of them worshipping in that way, Goddess Kali would, dovetail them towards the right path. But it's kind of vague at the moment how to understand the whole process that, the sacrifice, and it's a worship for them. So, it's interesting how that still is being practiced. And the other one, which is also, it's the black magic, black art. And I mean, even both of these, black arts, or you talk about worship of, sect of black magic, they refer to as black art. So both of these methods, black art and also worshipping, sacrificing animals for material benefit, both of them will have a sort of a boomerang effect if you're not doing it right. Like in the case of Jad Bharat, we saw, you'll see in the other upcoming verses that how Goddess Kali comes out, because, Jad Bharat is a pure devotee. He comes out, she comes out, and she slaughters all the dark boys. So people who practice this, they need to be very careful in their practice, because even for black magic, only time I have seen this is only in movies, that how it's done. But at the end, the climax is always that they have a bad effect. They either die or something bad happens. So it has a boomerang effect. So they need to be very careful. And overall, not a idle way of worship if you look at it. Yes. So now, for us, practitioners of Hare Krishna movement, being in Krishna consciousness, what is the worst case scenario if we are not, being in Krishna consciousness, doing our chanting, devotional service, meeting devotees, serving devotees, singing Vaishnava songs, having prasadam. The worst case scenario that we have, if we don't complete this properly, or maybe we're inattentive with our chanting, it's like we're given a chance to come back and to continue. So it's such a positive thing, right? In comparison to other kind of worship, the worship in Krishna consciousness, it is win-win. You're still here doing your thing, you're doing the bhakti, but if you're not successful, Krishna is so merciful that in our next life, we're either born in a rich family, where you don't have to do all this, material things, where you're collecting things and trying to survive, but, you have all the resources available to you. And Krishna is more merciful if you're born in a Brahmin family, and, you just finish things off there and then. So it's very merciful. Also, in the Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada speaks about, it should be noted that they never sacrifice an intelligent man before the goddess. So this is back to the worship of Kali, but they never sacrifice anyone intelligent. So that's good. That's good in sense that at least there's a difference they know between a dull man and intelligent man. Now, Srila Prabhupada goes on describing that what is intelligent, what is intelligent man. So from Shastra, we know intelligent person is one who knows the purpose of life. And it is not the one who has a degree, a bank balance, a nice car or nice house, not that. So real intelligence means linking with the supreme personality of Godhead. We see this mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam 4, Canto 4, chapter 29, verse 5. But in material existence, so-called intelligence is actually ignorance. When intelligence is cleared up, it is called Buddhi Yoga. In other words, when intelligence is dovetailed with the desire of Krishna, it is called Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. And also we see over here that in Bhagavad Gita 10.10, Krishna says, Tesam satata yuktanam bhajantam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upyantite. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Real intelligence means linking with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When this is done, Supreme Personality of Godhead from within gives real intelligence by which one can return home back to Godhead. And that is what we see in the pastimes of Jadbharat, that Krishna was actually giving him the intelligence was, that's how he remembered all his past lives. How else he would have remembered. There's another thing which is mentioned, I heard it in a lecture, it's interesting. What people consider intelligence in this day and age, you see, right? Intelligence is all about the growth of outside world, materially, skyscrapers, big buildings, good cars, and materially, like everything external to you is upgraded. However, the conscious inside is not. So how the degradation of the society is, it's intelligence outside, but mental inside. You are not conscious of your upgrade. Your consciousness is not upgrading. You're not ritually inclining yourself to know the Supreme, but in verse you are more involved in other affairs of the material world and getting yourself entangled. So it's like intel outside, but mental inside. Intelligence outside, like intel outside, but mental inside. Because the amount of suffering that mentally people go through in this day is remarkable. The rate at which New Zealand has depression, and suicide rates in youngsters, overall in general over the world as well, it's very high. And it is just because of the lack of knowledge. It's just because of the association they're missing, and the important things of life. It also, it's not just being in Krishna consciousness, but having the proper mental thinking that what is right, what is wrong. So how the society is degrading day by day is alarming right now. So the anxiety, stress, depression, that is just growing, and it's just better education materially is not helping because it is out there. People have access to material education and they're going through it, but it is inside which is not changing. So there is this missing link that it's not connecting them to God. I mean, if it's anyone, it could be a Hindu or a Christian or Muslim. What is missing that they're not able to sort of get peace. Why not, they're not able to get peace. But from our Shastra, we understand the only way to get peace is if you connect to the Lord, if you are chanting the Lord's name, and if you are associating with devotees. So bhajan, kriya, sadhu, sangha, and those are some of the items that are so important. So with that, there is other thing that is mentioned on the purport as well that I just wanted to bring out. It says further in the purport, it says, he's simply dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead for protection. And the verse by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur describes the surrender unto Lord. Mara bhi rakha bhi yo ichha tumar. O Lord, I'm fully surrendered unto your lotus feet. Now, as you desire, you may protect me or kill me. You have the full right to do either. So we understand that Jad Bharat can say that because he's an exalted devotee. Can we put ourselves to say that? I remember our Gurudev was here and he ask this question. If Krishna comes today and he says, so, how many of you would like to sort of, give up your life for Krishna right now? We're not in that conscious, we're not there with that conscious. What if Krishna actually says, yes, Madhavi, I'll kill you guys. It's like, oh, sorry, Krishna, I was just kidding. You took it very seriously. But it's just the whole logic that, we are studying about exalted devotees and we cannot imitate them, and these verses where they're fully surrendered. And it's a gradual process for us that we need to gradually, probably not, it's not this life, it will take some time for us to sort of come to that stage of, yes, I'm fully surrendered unto the Lord. So with that, I just wanted to talk about few qualities that we learn, because obviously, repeated this quite a few times now, that because Jabhat is exalted, we cannot imitate him, but we can learn from his character. And some of the things that we can learn, a very important one, is to be tolerant. Such a difficult one. To be tolerant. And we see that how he was tolerant, even though his step brothers were mistreating him, he didn't retaliate, he didn't protest, or he didn't, started saying, oh, don't do this, you guys don't know anything. He didn't do anything of that nature. But, the food, the kind of food that he was offered, rotten, rice, the leftover rice cakes that you have, the bottom base, and and he ate it gladly. He took it gladly. So just to understand that we imagine, you can't even imagine this. Like if somebody doesn't give us prasadam in the hall downstairs, we'll, people will be upset that, I've been here since morning and I don't get to eat anything. So, but the consciousness of Jat Bharat, we see that he accepted anything and did not complain. So to few items on tolerance, which is the demands of the mind's demand, and actions of anger. So most of us have studied Nectar of Instruction, and the famous verse on Nectar of Instruction, Vachavegam Manasaprodvegam, Jiva Vegam Udar Pastavegam, Vetan Vegan Vishayatadhira, Sarvamatima Prithivim Sashesha. So a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, the actions of anger, and the urges of tongue, belly, and genitals is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So, so how does one control the desires or tolerate these urges? I was hearing this one talk. Self-talk is something that does help. Self-talk, like talking to, in nowadays the term they use is affirmations, that is telling yourself, talking to yourself, educating yourself. So this is an interesting thing that, I found it of a lecture that, that these urges are there. There's Nectar of Instruction talks quite detailed about how, like, if you are talking about the mind demand, like how your mind, whatever it wants, it tells you to do. But if it's not the right thing, who will tell the mind that it's not the right thing? Your intelligence, your spiritual intelligence needs to speak. So it's healthy conversations with the mind that, hang on, is this right or not? So you have your self-talk to us to know what is right and what is wrong and make the difference. And that really helps. So before we just jump on the urge to speak, everybody wants to put their speak without filter on, then it's dangerous, right? Because then we are not considering the other person. We are not in their shoes. We don't understand, but we're just spitting out what we want to say. But our Shastra said not to do that, because there's a shloka in Bhagavad Gita 17.15, the austerity of speech. So it says, austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, and beneficial, and not agitating to others. Very important, isn't it? And also in regularly reciting the literature. So our urge to speak, we need to how to tolerate it is by the austerity of the speech, which means you need to really know or tell yourself before you speak. You can take a pause when you're having a conversation with somebody that, okay, that person is saying something, probably I don't like it, or how he's saying it, I can't take it. Before we start, it's like, should hold back. And probably, have that subtle talk with your, intelligence to the mind, saying, okay, what should I do in this situation? Is it better that I remain silent? Will that help? Because then it allows me to think a little before I actually respond to it. So, that kind of consciousness is required just to avoid quite a lot of things that happens around when we speak something and we say something in the moment and it's actually not beneficial. So, and the urges of the mind or the mind's demands, like how, and self-talk is one of the best methods. Now, I heard this example and it was very interesting. This, there was this, child crying and loudly crying in a sort of crowded area. And the mother, she calls out loudly, Jennifer, Jennifer, don't cry. Everything will be okay. Don't worry. Everything will be okay. And there was a man passing by and he was like, oh, is Jennifer your daughter's name? And she said, no, Jennifer is my name. I'm actually telling my mind that everything will be okay. I'm actually telling my mind that don't worry, everything will be okay. And most of the time that is the case, that we are overwhelmed with the situations and we sort of react to it. If we sort of tell ourselves that, no, it's okay, everything will be okay, then things go away, isn't it? That situation sort of calms down. And we have heard this famous one, all is well, all is well, telling your mind all is well. So it is actually you're telling your mind. You're telling your mind that everything is actually will be okay. And most of the time when situations do happen and we reflect back on it, and we're like, oh, it wasn't such a big thing that did happen. It was like could have been resolved like this. It could have been just a shoulder tap and a quick chat, rather than cooking things in mind and making it worse. So yeah, so most of the time self-talk is something that we need to sort of look into. The other thing I wanted to just touch on was actions of anger. Srila Prabhupada mentions actions of anger. He doesn't say urges of anger. He says actions of anger. That means when anger does come, it's currently internal, isn't it? Like you're angry on someone. But as soon as you take an action on that probably you harm somebody, or you do something that really harms the other person, that's when actions of anger, that is the actual aparat that we're doing. So the root cause, or from root, how you can take this out, if there's an anger situation, that what should one do when you're in that situation of anger? You're angry on somebody, or probably somebody is saying something to you, you don't like it, you completely don't like it. But as devotee, what should be our approach? And this is what I get from Srila Prabhupada's lectures actually, that to take it from root, it's, from root is the only method is to forgive. If there is a situation where somebody is really making it difficult for you to sort of like, commit an aparadh by saying things that you don't like to hear and things like that, before that aparadh is actually completed, it says you should be able to forgive them. Can you imagine that? That is Charaka Pandit says, the beauty of a saintly person is in their power to forgive. So, every day we go through that. And especially even in our Hare Krishna society, we come across people that say something that we don't like. And how do we deal with it? How do we deal with it? Obviously, forgiveness is one thing. You talk to the person and tell them, that, this is something probably I didn't like the way you approached, or, what can we do? There's some differences between what we think. How can we resolve it? The talking is one thing, but if the situation is bad, then forgiveness. You have to forgive. When you forgive, it just lightens you. It just lightens the whole thing. It is same as uh, if there's a not just this also refers to grudges. Grudges that we hold. Having grudges is same as holding a burning coal in your hand. It's not hurting the other person. It's actually hurting us because you're holding the grudge and you're holding the burning coal in your hand. So it's actually burning you, hurting you, than the other person. So in situation of anger, that you're mad on someone because somebody said something to you and you don't know how to react to it, the best thing in that course is approaching the person, talking, and not holding anything back. I remember the verse when we have Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, and he touched on this point also, forgiveness. You have to forget. And there's an example by Srila Prabhupada. There was one disciple of Srila Prabhupada who kept making the same mistake again and again. And Srila Prabhupada used to forgive him again and again. And one day, one of the disciples approached Srila Prabhupada saying, Srila Prabhupada, how many times will you forgive him? And Srila Prabhupada said, I will forgive him eternally. So that's the beauty. It says that Srila Prabhupada gives a great emphasis on this, that the beauty of a tapasvi or a saintly person is their willingness and the ability to forgive any situation under any circumstance. Forgiveness is huge. So we should consider this by looking at Jeb Bharat. He didn't keep any grudges towards his his step brothers, and he accepted everything as it comes, as with Krishna's mercy. And similarly, as we see ourselves, we have our God brothers, our God sisters, and our great community. So loving exchange is so important. And if we have situations where we cannot tolerate, then there is obviously a process of higher authority that we can approach and speak to and resolve situation. But forgiveness, we shouldn't hold grudges, or it shouldn't be a case that we're not able to speak to somebody. It's very not nice, isn't it? It's not nice to have that kind of situation. But I just wanted to highlight this, that, to have the mood of forgiveness, to be tolerant in situations where we can tolerate, we can learn to tolerate. There's self-talk that you can have with yourself. I'm sure everybody has this. Everybody speaks to themselves that, what am I doing? Why am I doing this thing? And our Shastras help us and teaches that, especially with when we speak austerity of mind. Bhagavad Gita has given us everything. So, and just as before we speak, we need to consider that, does it sound nice? Actually, is it beneficial? Is it pleasing? It won't agitate anyone's mind. So these are some of the points I wanted to highlight today. With that, I will stop. Does anybody have any comments or anything you like to add? Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
In this point of forgiveness, there's sometimes situations where people report that the murder or the unpardonable people, the parents come up, you can see sometimes where parents are forgiving versus doing some of the way.
Wow.
You can see it's very powerful thing. You know, forgive someone for giving you something. Like I say, it's like holding a phone.
It is.
It's not looking at phones that
It
you can
is.
do not. Sometimes maybe they're Christian or whatever, but it's stand up. Like, give this person taking the life of the other.
It's very powerful. Yes, Prabhu. It's very powerful. And that's a very good example of what people are doing. Actually, they're forgiving. And that lets go of everything. It frees a person. I personally had an example. I when I joined Hare Krishna, it was when I was here. And the situation did happen where I kind of didn't like this, sort of a situation that happened, and I didn't know how to react to it, and I sort of closed myself. And it wasn't hurting the other side, other person. It was just hurting me. Whole time it was hurting me, and I would constantly think about it. And I had to really come. It took me a while to understand that you have to forgive. And the moment I forgave, I'm free. So very powerful, yes, indeed. Yes. Wow.
And that's so I was so happy with the reason because for a long time I was already forgiving someone who I thought really like
Yeah.
killed me every time. And that was, and then when I always remember my Christian yeah, like community wanted to kill her, restore me.
Oh, okay. Yes.
You're a sinner, restore me dead. Here comes Jesus Christ. Anybody who hasn't sinned, throw the first stone. And everybody knew that we have sinned. And,
Yeah.
yeah, so in the Christian tradition, the beauty of that we look into our own, which is very much about our own heart.
Correct.
Because I'm really thinking that if we don't forgive, that we're living all the people. And how about Christian? How can we?
Correct.
I remember one of the I think we are compassionate to others. Same thing with forgiveness. So that's your feeling of freedom.
Yeah.
That's how you feel.
Yeah. It's a peace formula. It is. It is.
It's like people in that analogy. People that's holding mind. The voters say, after him, trying to kill him to get that meat.
Yeah.
He was so confused. He let go of that meat. And immediately all the voters didn't chase after him. Because they were only after him.
Very nice analogy. Yes.
So when we forget, like, when we hold grudges and we think about our friends, you're holding it,
Yeah.
I in mind, I'm right, I'm always the right. But when we let go of that, we trust the buffalo. And all the vultures will just go there, and you're free.
Correct.
Shut your arms, free.
Correct. Yeah. It's hard to tolerate, that the situation itself, but as soon as you let go and forgive, then it just fixes everything, and then you look back and it's like it was nothing. It's something that I was just hanging on to. So, yeah. Thank you. Right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, jai. Thank you.